New Orleans veterans report for training camp on July 25th at New Orleans Saints training facility in Metairie as the Saints look to continue their recent rise back from the depths of mediocrity. We'll look over their updated depth chart, which includes a key top draft pick and 3 former Saints, as we preview training camp for the New Orleans Saints by going one-on-one with Larry Holder, Saints columnist for NOLA.com on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. It's Thursday, July 12th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the OFN Meeting Room as we preview NFL training camps for the 2018 season. And we continue today with New Orleans Saints columnist for NOLA.com, Larry Holder. Larry, thanks for helping us talk New Orleans Saints football today.
Yeah, you got it, Greg. No problem.
And by the way, am I allowed to say New Orleans Saints? I know that's maybe not the proper way of saying it, but is that just normal for your part? You guys deal with it, so it is what it is?
You could call it, it's Nolans, but a lot of people down here call it New Orleans.
They do.
So I know it. Yeah, not a lot of people outside of say New Orleans, and that's okay.
Okay,
that's okay. You won't get
anybody mad.
A drink thrown on you. Yeah, no one will throw a drink on you on Bourbon Street unless they just happen to fall and spill and whatever. But New Orleans, but you got Metairie right, so that's good.
Well, that's important too. I appreciate that. All right, Larry. So how long have you been covering the Saints for?
Yeah, I've covered the team since 2006. Actually, my first day on the beat was when Drew Brees signed to the Saints. So
you're the reason.
One quarterback. Yeah, exactly. I've covered one quarterback and one head coach minus the 2012 season. One head coach and one quarterback for the entire time I've covered the team. And I've been with NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune since 2012 covering them. I was a beat writer and then became a columnist 4 years ago. So, yeah, I've been around this team for all the good, all the bad, and everything in between.
And it's coming back to good. I remember last year when we were previewing the season on this network, the Saints were one of my top sleepers, and that was because I really liked what I saw in the preseason. I know a lot of people completely disregard the preseason, and I'm not one of them. I don't pay a whole lot of stock into it, but I do think it matters to some teams, and it just depends on what you see. And what I saw was a lot of good young talent on defense that I hadn't seen before. And I said, wait a second, they've got some defense to go along with Drew Brees now, and a running game, of course, too. This looks interesting, and we know it's a quarterback league, so not a bad sleeper, because I think at the time the Saints were like 50-1 or something like that, or maybe even higher to win the Super Bowl. So there ain't no sleeper no more. They're a team that a lot of people think maybe should be one of the favorites, any reason to think that they won't be?
No, outside of just the parity of the league, that's the one thing that just gives me pause. But because, look, Saints were a third-place team last year. One in 2016, they won the division. 3 2016 teams finished third, and then they won the division. The Eagles finished fourth, and they won the Super Bowl in 2017. So other than parity and the strength of schedule increases a little bit, but no, talent-wise, I think the Saints are one of the most talented teams in the league. And you're used to seeing veteran talent around the good Saints teams. This is young talent, and young equals cheap equals you're going to have them for a while.
That's
so
right.
You can build around them. So I think that's what kind of makes this whole thing promising. I mean, when you got the offensive and defensive rookie of the year coming back, you've got bona fide Pro Bowlers on the roster, young guys like Mike Thomas, veterans, of course, like Cam Jordan, and you always got a chance with Drew Brees. And even though his numbers were down last year, that's a good thing. It means they didn't have to lean on him because the other areas of the offense were playing well. The defense was putting him in better positions. So, I think a lot of people around the country are expecting the Saints to be contenders to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. And there's no reason outside of, like I said, parity. There's no reason not to think that they would be among those teams you'd be talking about trying to get to Atlanta for the Super Bowl.
And a lot of times the parity comes in the form of injuries. Teams are so close that injuries can be the deciding factor from year to year. Turnovers at crucial times, that's also important. Who wins close games, but especially injuries. By the way, that last to first analogy that you used, it kind of reminds me of the NBA, doesn't it? Of all the parity that you get year in and year out in the NBA. I just.
Oh yeah, same thing. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, trust me, in New Orleans, people are wondering, DeMarcus Cousins, Rajon Rondo. All right, see y'all later.
Yeah,
all
right.
So yeah, exactly. So we're dealing with it firsthand here in New Orleans.
Yep. All right. So Drew Brees, Sean Payton, they're the big boys. Brees gets the new 2-year deal. So and he wasn't going anywhere anyway. I wasn't buying any of that nonsense. Sean Payton, by the way, because I know we just did a New England preview, talked about Belichick and Brady. So what do you think happens, Payton and Brees? Brees will be here for who knows how long. You can tell me your best guess, and same thing with Payton. And Payton here as long as Brees here?
I would say yes. And people ask me how long do I think Drew's going to go. I've been wrong, obviously, because I didn't think he'd still be with the Saints and playing as well as he's been playing.
Yeah.
Just by sheer history of the NFL. But I think Drew probably has these 2 years left, and depending on what happens, because here's the thing: if the Saints would have went 7-9 last year and missed the playoffs again, we could be without Drew and we could be without Sean Payton here in New Orleans. They could have just decided to make time to make a change, and the fact that they rebounded, now you've got more shelf life. So, and Sean Payton's through contract through 2020.
Okay.
So because I just think this team's going to be good. So I think they're going to certainly be together for another 2 years, and that's the window. That's what they're shooting for. There's a reason why they got super aggressive in the draft to trade up for Marcus Davenport. They wanted a bona fide pass rusher opposite Cam Jordan. They haven't had that since Junior Gillette a few years ago. And so, yeah, they are going to be as aggressive as they can be to win now, because they know, and they don't want to hear about the window being limited, but they know. They're not going to say that publicly, but they're not dumb. So they've got 2 years with Drew, I would say. Maybe they could squeeze out a third, but they know they've got 2 good years to make this thing happen.
Well, like you said, I mean, you could just look at the roster and you see all the young talent, and that gives you faith to feel like, hey, this is going to be something that will last a few more years. We could actually start on defense, because you mentioned Davenport. He's going to bring a much-needed additional pass rusher, somebody that could help Cam Jordan out. You got Rankins, and a very underrated interior defense as well. And then Alex Okafor had himself an excellent season before the injury. Trey Hendrickson is a very intriguing young player. So have you seen more depth on the defensive line in New Orleans before?
Look, I think at defensive end, they're probably deeper than we've seen in the past. We're curious to see about Okafor coming off of the Achilles tear. He did that in Week 11 against Washington. And so, he's trying to come back. So if you could have Cam Jordan's going to play every down. If you lose him, you're in trouble. It's just like on offense. You lose Drew Brees, you're in trouble. You lose Cam Jordan, you're in trouble. So, and he's been as durable as they come. So but yeah, look, I think you draft Davenport. I'm curious to see if he's an every down guy. Probably not, because like I said, I think you got Okafor. I think he could be ready for the start of the season, coming off the Achilles late last season. You mentioned Trey Hendrickson. I know they like him a lot, but he's been banged up a little bit during his rookie year, so they're going to try to work him there. I'd like to see a little bit more depth at defensive tackle. I mean, you mentioned Rankins, and I think they're expecting bigger things from him in year 3. He didn't quite have the impact he would have liked numbers-wise, but he did help open some things up because Cam Jordan, look, he had a monster year, and he can do it all. But Tyler Davison would be, say, their nose tackle, but young guy David Onyemata, he's improving. He's going to in his 3rd year. But there's a reason why they were a little bit interested in Ndamukong Suh, because they would have liked to have kind of gotten someone in there with depth. Remember last year, the Saints spent significant money on Nick Fairley, had the heart condition, and he's gone. You would have assumed he would have been here.
Sure.
So they've been trying to navigate through that. But no, I think their defensive line is going to be improved this year, and that's something like we haven't seen a lot of great defensive line play in the last couple of years. So you started seeing some better play there, and they're expecting big things right away from Davenport, which is why they shot all the way up from 27 to 14 to go get him.
Where does Rankins play most of the time?
He's not the nose, so he's the three technique guy, and so he's an every down guy.
Does he play? Does he ever play on the edge at times?
They tried that a little bit once Okafor was hurt.
Okay.
But that's not what they want to do. I know he played a little bit of that in college, and when they drafted him, I even asked Sean Payton maybe he could do that.
Yeah.
And no, that's not where they see him optimally. So, which is why, like I said, they got Okafor. They went out and got Marcus Davenport.
Yep.
They've even got a veteran, George Johnson, who's been bounced around the league. He came in late last year and picked up a couple sacks, so he was kind of a nice surprise. He's on the roster, too. They've got a sixth-round pick from last year, Al-Qadim Muhammad on the edge. They've even got Haley Kikaha, who he had some promise coming in 2015, but injuries have, and he could be on the outside looking in, so much so that they're just trying to find a spot. Does he play the edge? Is he a Sam linebacker? They don't really know what to do with him because he was highly prolific in college with sacks, but not the case during his career here.
All right, at linebacker, you brought in A.J. Klein, and not that he's a game changer. Anzalone's injury early last year was a tough one, but Craig Robertson came in, did an admirable job. And then the big signing of Demario Davis. And Davis had his best season last season with the Jets, and I follow the Jets, so I know what Davis is made of. And I think what was most important with Davis was that he grew up. And I think that's what really made him a more complete player and a leader, and that's something that helped him out and helped him get a nice little contract with the Saints. Yeah,
people were kind of surprised because they spent starter money on A.J. Klein last offseason, and he came in, was the middle linebacker. And this year, it looks like that might not be the case. All points to Demario Davis, and look, I think he's come in, and you could tell he's kind of got that leader type mentality, and so I think that's going to be good. But I think they're as deep at linebacker as they've been in a while. They were banged up last year, but their linebacking core, you mentioned Craig Robertson. Without him, he doesn't get enough credit. Without him, the last couple of years, they'd have been really toast. But look, you've got A.J. Klein, you've got Demario Davis, Alex Anzalone they really like. Manti Te'o stepped in and had to play a big role last year, so you've got him. So you've got guys that can kind of play all these different positions, and so that's a good thing because how often do we even see three linebackers on the field anymore? Not very often. So you got to be able to play a little Will and play a little Mike if you can, and all of those guys. Outside, Anzalone's more of a weak side, but all four of those guys can play Mike if you need to and put them in Sam. So I feel like they like their versatility there, and that's going to help them because on the defense, you'd say linebacker became a weak spot last year because Klein got hurt, Anzalone got hurt.
Yep.
So they needed to spruce that up, and so they spent good money on Demario Davis, even more than they spent on A.J. Klein.
All right, and then in the secondary, this is really where things changed for the Saints because Ken Crawley came out of nowhere to have a big season. Marshawn Lattimore, one of the top rookies in football last year, and really, Marcus Williams is another rookie that was outstanding. So big changes, and then you bring in Patrick Robinson. He returns to the team after a big year with the Eagles. You bring in Kurt Coleman. So just a couple of years ago, this was a major issue for the Saints. Issue no more.
It certainly seems that way. Yeah, that there's no issue no more. But yeah, like the additions of Lattimore, of course, is huge. I mean, the Saints haven't had a shutdown corner, I'd probably say, ever in their franchise history. Like they had Eric Allen, but he was on his third team.
Yeah,
he made a Pro Bowl way back in the mid-'90s with the Saints, but who cares? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't even.
That's right.
So I mean, yeah, they've never really had a shutdown corner, and then Ken Crawley went from being a healthy and active last year for the first 2 games to a starter and a solid number 2, and then I'm curious to see how well Patrick Robinson does because look, New Orleans was a house of horrors for him. It did not go well for him, and it seems like the Eagles found the exact spot to put him at that nickel spot. I guarantee you that's exactly where he's going to play with the Saints. And they got a nice little deal, for a veteran who had struggled but 1 good year. So the Saints are going to be banking on him at corner. So they've got their top 3 corners look pretty solid. And so then you pivot over to safety, and everyone's going to remember poor Marcus Williams for the bumble of the year, or maybe of the century on the missed tackle against the Vikings in the playoff game. But they wouldn't have even been positioned to win that game if he didn't make an interception earlier that game.
That's
and
right.
He had a great rookie year.
Yep.
It still stings the fact that they blew tons of money on Jarris Byrd, but now they've got Marcus Williams, and he's playing like they wanted Jarris Byrd to play. And so you've got him. And then, look, Von Bell, it was a second-round pick in 2016. And the fact that they brought Kurt Coleman in shows me they're not totally sold on Von Bell. And I think Kurt Coleman will end up being the starter there. And, like, they don't need him to be 8-interception Kurt Coleman, but they don't need him to be the Kurt Coleman that wasn't the same guy last year than we saw for a bunch of years in Carolina. So, look, I think overall at secondary, you gotta like what you see there, and I don't think they're missing much without Kenny Vaccaro. I think they were over him, and his skill set was pretty limited as far as what he could do.
Sure.
So I don't think they're going to miss Kenny.
Anything yet from the 2 young draft picks, Jamerson or Moore, or are they just going to be trying to barely make the roster, especially with the depth of this secondary? Anything that you've seen so far? Anything good?
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
To kind of get behind. I mean, it's just with I'm curious to see them day in and day out OTAs.
Sure.
Helmet shirts and shorts outside of OTAs. But there are other rookies that are being brought up in the media, and Sean Payton does bring those guys up. Hey, keep an eye out on these 2 guys. They are scratching and clawing to make the roster. Look, P.J. Williams is entering the final year of his contract. He's a 3rd rounder in 2015, so he could be on the bubble. I mean, you draft 2 guys, and both have the ability to play corner, even though I know Jamerson, you could also look at him at safety, so he's got a little bit of versatility. But
and
but
Crowley's
Crowley's
a free agent, too, at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, because he was an undrafted guy, so when he signed, he was a 3-year deal, so this would be his contract year as well. So, you got some questions there. Like, I think he needs to put together another solid year.
Sure.
Now, are they going to throw at him? Yeah. So they're
That's right.
throw at him because they're going to want to try to stay away from Lattimore. But So he's going to be tested again. But no, look, I think he was one of the bigger surprises of last year's team. Let's see if he can replicate that in year 3.
All right, let's switch over to the offense. And, of course, we know how great Drew Brees is. So Tom Savage, he was brought in to be the backup. And what about J.T. Barrett? Is he basically going to lucky to make the practice squad? Have you seen? Is he going to get a lot of snaps? What's the deal there with Barrett?
Well, yeah, J.T. Barrett, I think, is someone they envision as a practice squad guy. And, look, he looks good in rookie minicamp, but once you went up against the big boys, he had some struggles. But, look, you're not asking him to play tomorrow. So so it's not a big deal. But, yeah, you mentioned Tom Savage. He got a 1-year deal. But, look, the talk of New Orleans all offseason has been about Taysom Hill.
Really? I like that.
And, yeah. Oh, yeah. They plucked him last year off waivers from Green Bay, and his story is pretty crazy.
Yes.
Saints special teams wasn't playing so hot, and they were like, all right, Taysom's one of the fastest, most athletic guys, so they put him on special teams. He's making special teams tackles last year, and now he's just playing quarterback. And it wouldn't stun me at all if he became the backup, and because they see a lot in Taysom Hill. So it's almost like I feel like Sean Payton is looking at Taysom Hill and saying, remember how I discovered this Tony Romo guy? Maybe
Interesting.
I can do the same thing of an undrafted guy like Taysom Hill. And you could see, like, he's not, of course, he's nowhere near a finished product, but you could see why in practice, because we didn't get to see him in practice at quarterback last year because it was during the regular season. You don't see team reps or anything like that, and he wouldn't be taking them anyway. So this is kind of the first time we're seeing him, and you could kind of see why Sean Payton can be enamored with his athleticism and just his stature. And look, when Mike McCarthy and Sean Payton are fighting over a quarterback, you probably got to know that there's some promise there.
The only issue with Taysom Hill in college was staying healthy. I mean, He was a dynamic special college football quarterback. And, boy, he if he would have stayed healthy for a couple of years, BYU could have been potentially fighting for a national championship. That's how good he was in college. He just couldn't stay healthy. So I'm glad that he's healthy now and getting because that's it. If he stays healthy, this just does not surprise me that he could possibly win over that second number 2 job. That'd be a great story. That'd be nice.
Oh, people are even mentioning him. All right, he's the heir apparent of Drew Brees. It's funny because it's the off-season story, and Taysom Hill has all this media around him, and Drew's locker's right next to him, and he's like, what's going on here? Like, just kind of joking and laughing, like, why is everyone talking to him?
Yeah, right.
Don't you remember me? Of course, but then it's like, all right. And then they're like, all right, Drew, yeah, you're the man. Yeah, we know. No big deal. But, yeah, like, he's almost become like this mythological figure, Taysom Hill, because you're like, try almost block punts, and now he's like a quarterback. It's pretty funny how kind of the legend of Taysom Hill has grown since he's been here.
Well, let's hope he stays healthy because that would be great. That'd be a nice story to follow. At running back, Mark Ingram's going to miss the first 4 games, so Alvin Kamara is going to get a lot of touches as always anyway. But does Daniel Lasco and Boston Scott, the rookie, are they battling out for the opportunity to get touches early with Ingram out?
Yeah, I think Boston Scott's part of that mix. I'd honestly be surprised if Lasco made the team. Like, he didn't make the team out of training camp last year. Came back on off the practice squad, had a really bad concussion in Buffalo, scary concussion, and I'd be surprised if Lasco made the team. But yeah, look, I don't think, though, and Sean Payton even said this, that Kamara is going to be, say, the primo feature guy because while Ingram's gone as far as receiving carries, because that would limit his diversity.
That's true.
And I don't think they're going to do that. And Sean Payton said they're not going to give him 25 carries a game. So they brought in Terrence West at the end of minicamp. Of course, veteran guys bounce around the league a little bit. So they're probably looking to see what they have with him. You mentioned Boston Scott. They like what they have in him. He could be a return guy. I think someone that they're looking at, but he might be someone they throw in the mix. They've got Trey Edmonds. He was an undrafted rookie last year who was their number 3 running back, but you never heard about him because Kamara and Ingram were healthy.
Yeah.
So you never heard about this guy ever. So you've got him. Jonathan Williams is a guy that he was on the roster for half of the season last year, but never active on game day. So, those are guys kind of working in the mix to see who can fill in for Ingram. And but yeah, look, Ingram, he's in the final year of his deal, suspension. So I think the first part of the schedule, the Saints could easily go 3-1, possibly 4-0 if they can win in Atlanta, and then you would get a healthy, fresh Mark Ingram back. Without an injury. So if you're looking for a silver lining, that's it.
Okay.
But when Ingram and Kamara in there, I mean, look, I think they're the best 1-2 combo in all of football.
And no reason then to go out and at some point during camp or the preseason and bring in a veteran.
Well, that's kind of what they're thinking with Terrence West.
Okay.
There was some talk, mostly Adrian Peterson based. Hey, Adrian would like to come back to New Orleans.
Yeah, that'll work.
They're done with that. Yeah, they worked out Jamal Charles, and Terrence West was part of that workout. I know they wanted to maybe work out DeMarco Murray. He didn't want to do it. So, yeah, I think Terrence West is that veteran guy that they're maybe taking a peek at, and we'll see what he brings. coming up here in training camp in the preseason.
All right, and as far as the receivers, Watson's back at tight end to go along with Hill. Not sure about the depth there, but really there's that tight end spot. I mean, Fleener tried to do it, but really didn't. So it really just hasn't been the same since Graham's left. The receivers, they signed Meredith, which was interesting. Thomas, we know, as you mentioned, is a big-time player. Austin Carr, we everybody. I mean, come on, we had him pegged going to the Patriots. That was a Patriot receiver through and through. Surprised that they dropped him, and the Saints, of course, picked him up, stole him from the Patriots. So Traquan Smith added. Brandon Coleman's never really developed. Is the depth there in case anything happens to Thomas, or would they be in big trouble?
Without Thomas, you're in big trouble. Yes, you might as well put him in the Breeze, Cam Jordan category, because this is really, and I've covered the team since 2006, saw Marcus Colston develop. Michael Thomas is the first bona fide number one receiver Drew Brees has had. Look, Marcus Colston, you can call him, he's their leading pass catcher in team history, this, that, the other. He's got these big numbers, but you never really felt, man, he's like a game changer.
Yeah,
no, Michael Thomas is that. Right. Michael Thomas is that. Michael Thomas is the first time Drew Brees has had a Pro Bowl wide receiver in the entire time he's been with the Saints.
That's crazy.
He's had running backs. He's had Jimmy Graham. No wide receivers. So Michael Thomas making a Pro Bowl last year. But look, I think they've got some. They're going to have a tough time at wide receiver as far as who to keep and who to let go, because you mentioned Traquan Smith and Cam Meredith. They're going to be on the team. Basically, they traded out. They said, all right, we'll take restricted free agent Cam Meredith and let restricted free agent Willie Snead walk. So they did that. And so now you've got Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn. Look, I think he came out and he was one of the better sneaky signings of the of last offseason. I was like, oh, boy, here comes Ted Ginn. He's going to, with Ted Ginn experience, drop passes.
Yeah.
But he was one of the actually the most consistent pass catchers in the NFL, which I would have never thought I would have said that in my entire life. So the fact that you've got those, so you got Mike Thomas, Ted Ginn, Traquan Smith isn't going anywhere, and Cam Meredith. So what do you do after that? You mentioned Brandon Coleman. They re-signed him on a one-year deal. Look, they know who he is. So if other guys beat him out, so be it. So you've got Tommy Lee Lewis, who's more of a smaller guy, almost kind of a gimmicky guy, but he's on the roster. You mentioned Austin Carr, so they've got plenty of receivers and not enough spots to house all these receivers. So it's going to be one of those battles in training camp you're going to keep an eye on, because somebody who was on the roster last year is not going to make this team.
Okay.
And I think that just kind of shows you the depth that they have, and they wanted to beef it up because, look, they think Cam Meredith can come in and rebound off that knee injury. They like Traquan Smith. He's under a 4-year deal, so he's not necessarily. Well, he could get cut, but you envision him being around for a while. So
yes.
Some of these other guys, like I said, Coleman, maybe Tommy Lee Lewis, like some of these guys, and Austin Carr, some of these guys who were on the roster last year won't make the team.
Who plays the slot for the team?
That's Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, right.
Look, you would have last year, but it didn't really happen that much. You see Willie Snead play that a lot.
Yeah.
But his production went down. So I'm curious to see what they do at the slot, because you don't necessarily have some, like Lance Moore was like the slot guy forever.
Yeah.
Even Marcus Colston played some slot. But Brandon Cooks is gone, so I'm curious who is going to play that slot, because you wouldn't envision Michael Thomas, probably not necessarily Ted Ginn, maybe a little bit. So I think they're going to try to develop and see what they can do there. But you might as well count Alvin Kamara, because he'll play slot inside at times too.
All right, and it's also as we wrap up with the offensive line is of course they go out and they've with the younger deal and some draft picks, including Ramchick, a lot of new faces as far as backups. including Bushrod coming back, Leonard the draft pick, Clapp the draft pick. One of the things I've noticed is, and I don't think it's a surprise that the Saints were as good as they were last year, is that there seemed to be a philosophy change where this isn't all going to be a fancy passing team anymore. We have to get some defensive players on this team. We've got to build our offensive line. We got to run the football. We're going to go back to being what wins in the NFL, and that's defense and running the football and protecting your quarterback. And that's why maybe we're not seeing as so many dynamic receivers that Drew Brees is used to having, or at least better receivers. They've decided to use those draft picks and free agency deals on other positions, including the offensive line.
Yeah, look, and it's the fact that last year they had so many people banged up. It was a revolving door in the offensive line, but the fact that they had 6 solid linemen, like Senio Kelemete, there's a reason why he's with the Texans now. He was able to get a nice little deal, compete for a starting job because he played all the time last year because guys were hurt. But look, they're walking into this year with one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and Ryan Ramczyk, look, I was beating the drum saying that the Saints didn't get enough compensation for Brandon Cooks. They only got the number 32 overall pick.
Yeah.
Then when the pick comes, it's Ryan Ramczyk. And I understand the pick because when you saw who was around at that time, Ramczyk was the best guy on the board. There was no doubt. And at that time, you had Zach Strief, who had been playing well. So what happens? Zach Strief gets hurt.
Yeah.
Teron Armstead gets hurt. Ryan Ramczyk plays every game last year and is one of the better right tackles in the NFL.
Yep.
And boom, so you've got a guy, that first-round pick looks great. And then, look, I do think one key to that offensive line, and you talk about acquisitions, is Larry Warford. He came in, and they finally spruced up that guard spot because for a bunch of years they were always good at guard, but Jari Evans got old. Like Carl Nix, they got rid of a long time ago. Ben Grubbs, they traded away. So they were kind of floundering at guard. But they were big in Kevin Zeitler. And when his price jumped too high, they said, you know what, we like Warford at a little bit of a reduced price. And Warford went to Orlando for the Pro Bowl. It was an injury replacement. So he was the Saints' 7th Pro Bowler on that roster. So he's been great, really big in the run game. He's a road grader, so he can pound people. And then, look, I think Andres Pete has improved. He's probably the worst offensive lineman on the roster, but that's not within the starting 5. But that's not saying he could start anywhere, like in the league. Like he's become a viable guard. And now Max Unger is just the standard veteran who he gets it done still, but. Like, I do think a question mark is at left tackle. Teron Armstead's getting paid tons of money, and he has not been healthy the last 2 years. Really, much going into another year, third year.
Almost his career. Yeah, he's missed 34 of 80 games in his career.
Right.
Yeah,
and he's one of the highest paid left tackles in the NFL, and so I think this is a critical year for him. But when he's playing well, he's one of the best. I mean, there's a reason why they spent on him. So if he can stay healthy, which he's gone through all of OTAs and mini camps without a hitch, so that's a positive. And so if he can stay healthy, boy, you got to feel good about it. And then, like I said, like you brought up Jamon Bushrod, no Sean Payton, like he could be your utility 6th guy. I don't know how much the draft picks are going to play a role in this this year, but one like say Will Clapp might be a practice squad, maybe Rick Leonard. Honestly, I didn't even know who Rick Leonard was, and they took him in the 4th round. I was like, what? So yeah, it's I think the jury's out on him, and we haven't really seen much of him as it is. So, but yeah, look, their starting 5 is one of the best in the NFL. Now, like I said, Armstead's got to stay healthy, otherwise. That signing is going to look worse and worse as we go forward if he can't produce this year.
If he were to get hurt, you think Pete goes to left tackle or Ramczyk?
I would probably think that they would put Bushrod there. I don't think they'd want to move Pete anymore. They moved him around a lot. Yeah, they've moved him around a lot. They like him at guard, and that's been kind of his best spot because they played him at left tackle, they played him at right tackle, and I think they like him at guard. So if they and I think they would like to leave Ramczyk on the right side. Could he move to the left side? Sure, and maybe they would put Bushrod at right tackle. So maybe they do that because Ramczyk is capable of playing both spots.
Sure.
But that's why you have Bushrod in there. He
Yeah.
can play guard and tackle. So he's kind of like your 1 year in a pinch. This is probably his last year of his career, so that's kind of why they went out and got him.
Yeah, and it makes sense, too. Let everybody else stay where they are, and it makes it easier for continuity. And by the way, Lutz and Morstead, excellent combination. Return units haven't been very good, surprisingly, the last couple of years, or at least it hasn't appeared to be very good. Any changes? Ted Ginn's still going to get a lot of most of the punt returning. Any other changes as far as, of course, Kamara? We know how dangerous he can be when he gets his hands on the ball.
Sean Payton would like, since he's on the rules committee, to outlaw the kick return game. He'd rather take it at the 25 every time because, no, their kick return game and their punt return game has been bad the last few years. You mentioned Kamara. They don't want to use him there. They don't want to put him in harm's way if they don't have to.
Good idea.
Now, if you're in the Super Bowl,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, or in the playoffs, yeah, but they're not going to do that during the regular season. Look, I do think Boston Scott's a guy that could fit in well there.
Okay.
And so I would keep an eye on him. Tommy Lee Lewis is someone who that's the way he needs to make the team if he could do that. So I would look at that. Maybe Ginn in a pinch. They used him a little bit, but not much. I would think Boston Scott is someone who they're going to look heavily at because say if that's his role on game day and he can do both, that would free up other guys to kind of, like I said, stay out of harm's way.
Yes, absolutely. All right, awesome. Great job, Larry. I appreciate it. Best of luck this season covering the team, and maybe you'll cover the team back in the Super Bowl again because that's entirely possible. So that would be special, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be good. I covered that 2009 team. I didn't think they would be a Super Bowl team, so this one wouldn't be as big of a surprise. But they're certainly in the conversation, and I would not have thought that a year ago. So that's they're certainly on the up and up, and I think people in New Orleans, hey, if Drew Brees got another Super Bowl trophy, then you got to talk about him as one as you know. I know he's like people like to put him in the top 10 maybe all-time quarterbacks, but he's got a vault. If he can get another one, that would be huge for his legacy.
You're absolutely right, and I think he might get it. So best of luck, and I look forward to talking to you during the season as well. So thanks for checking in with us, Larry. Appreciate it.
All right, Greg. Take care, buddy.
You got it. Take care. That's Larry Holder. And again, he covers the Saints at NOLA.com, Times-Picayune, whatever you want to call it. I like saying NOLA.com. Pretty smooth way of promoting it. All right, now we have still Arizona, Atlanta, Buffalo, Carolina, Chargers, Rams, Eagles, Seattle, and of course the New York Jets, who will preview under the Jets Uncovered banner starting on the 23rd. We're going to do our Jets show on the 23rd. And that's it. Everything else is done. So you can go to the Our Lads Football Network page. You can check out all of the interviews, the training camp previews, including this one, which will be available and posted in the next couple of hours. Then we'll tweet it out at PrimeSN. That's my Twitter handle. I always let you know when everything is available on ourlads.com, on the Our Lads Football Network, interviews, shows, content, and so forth. All right, that'll wrap it up. Don't forget to order a draft review guide that's available right now at Our Lads. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this edition of the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma, where it's never too early to think about the start of the 2018 football season. We'll see you next time.